Hi, and welcome to Module 2 of Social Work 636. The purpose of this video is to provide an overview of the content and assignments for Module 2. Before I do that, I have a couple of notes that I wanted to share with you about Module 1. The first is to encourage you to proofread not only assignments but also message board posts. I think that sometimes the informality of online communication sometimes lends itself to less precision in word choice or to a certain laid backness in terms of letting typographical errors slip through. And really here I'm thinking not entirely about my own convenience in terms of the convenience of reading a clear post, but also just about the fact that in this class we're really focusing on professional communication, on professional contexts, and so when you're speaking with an organization's voice, the fact that it's online, on Twitter, on Facebook, or on something like Message Board should not get in the way of clear error-free communication. Now, of course, audience matters, and so if you're speaking to people of varying ages, varying levels of education, and so on, you're going to gear your communication to your audience. However, for no audience are typographical errors appropriate. And so it's just something to be careful about. I don't have anyone's particular post in mind here. It's just a reminder both to myself and to all of us about care in these online postings. And you should feel free, if you see typographical errors in my work, to let me know that they're there as well. We can help one another out in that way. The second thing I wanted to mention is to encourage you all to make sure you're reading the instructions for the assignments and any accompanying material. Sometimes that accompanying material helps to clarify the assignment instructions. Thirdly, I encourage you to take the time now to grab the feedback, the social media investigation feedback that your Module 1 partner should have provided for you by now. So grabbing that, keeping track of it, keeping a hard copy or an electronic copy of it other than the message board copy would be great. I don't think the message board copies are going anywhere, but this information may be helpful to you as you do future assignments in the course. The fourth thing I wanted to mention applies to your work in Module 2 as well as your work on other assignments in the course. So in assignment or in Module 2, you have an assignment called the Organizational Capacity Assessment. This major assignment, as well as the multi-part program proposal assignment, are both assignments done very much in the context of the organization or agency that you're focusing on for the semester. As such, your materials, your production will, in a sense, in effect, be you speaking on behalf of or in the voice of the organization or agency, rather than in your own student or individual voice. With that in mind, it becomes appropriate for you to use words like we and our to represent the organization, as opposed to words like they or their, it or its. So in other words, when you're talking in the voice of the organization, you're saying that as an organization, we do this, this, or we would like to apply for funding, or we propose, so on and so forth. It's an appropriate voice to use in those contexts. This then raises the question of what you do in terms of quoting or citing material. Generally, if you are an employee of an organization, you can provide things like the mission statement or the vision statement without explicit quotation marks because you are speaking in the voice of the organization and you are providing an organizational document. To be safe, you can always put those things in quotation marks. But I wanted to make this notation because, again, sometimes you're going to see things that don't include quotation marks for those type of objects or pieces of evidence. If you use or are writing or using pieces, let's say out of a publicly available publication of the organization, you should go ahead and put those in quotation marks. Now, do you have to use APA? It's a big question, get it every time. The simple answer is for this, no, comma, however. However, you do need to cite your sources. So if for your program proposal assignment, you find a prospective funder, perhaps you even find a funding opportunity, and you decide to do that assignment using that particular funding opportunity. Assume further, or imagine further, that there are explicit forms or instructions for the funding opportunity that you found. You will use those. If they say no references, then you don't provide references. If they say they want references, but they want them in the form of footnotes, then you're going to do that. The directions for the funder that you find supersede APA style. If you're not using a format, then I invite you to use whatever referencing style seems the most clear and convenient to you, but be consistent. The only way I'm going to have a problem is if you're inconsistent or if you use material that's not properly cited, but that should be. So those are the things that I wanted to make sure to give to you as we roll into Module 2. Please always ask questions if you have them. So taking a look at the syllabus now, Module 2 runs from February 2nd through February 15th. So it's another 2-week period. And the focus of this module is on funding, and as well as the relationship between unmet needs and program development. So in this week, I'm asking you to read chapters from the Brody and Nair text in part 4, which is about managing finances, developing resources, and so on and so forth. A really important complement to this material are these online resources. I urge you to take some time and take a look at these. Don't view these as extracurricular or as optional. View these as equally important to your textbook reading, particularly this Society for Nonprofits, as well as just a careful overview of the foundationcenter.org website. So all this material here pertains to seeking funding. The material in Kettner, Maroney, and Martin pertains to the identification of unmet need and the proposing of programs to meet an unmet need. There is a logical progression of steps laid out here. First, you'll read about how to assess current organizational practices. And one of your major assignments, the organizational capacity assessment, will run you through the process of organizational assessment for the organization you've chosen. Second, in part 2, you'll read about problem analysis and forming a needs statement. You will then have an opportunity in Message Board Post 2.1 to construct your own statement identifying organizational or program needs. And then in part 4, you'll read a chapter that complements some of what you'll have read in Brody and Nair, and that discusses cost effectiveness, calculations of cost and effect. So basically the question of, given this expected effect of a program, is it worth the cost? Maroney and Martin will do a fine job of introducing you to one of the pitfalls that organizations often fall into. But I want to highlight that here as well, because it is so easy to fall into, often without even realizing that one is doing it. And that pitfall can be summarized quite simply as positing needs as solutions. So for example, if you are enmeshed, surrounded by your organizational context, you might look around, for example, and say, you know, what the real problem is here is that we don't have enough social workers to address the needs of all the clients who come to us. Now, if you're an administrator or a social worker in that organization, yeah, that's a real need. You don't have enough social workers. But think of it this way, what does the client perceive as the need? Is the client's primary concern that there aren't enough social workers, or is the client's primary concern with the services or concrete items that the social worker could link them to? And this is really a shift in thinking that's important for all of us to make as we're in organizational contexts. So I'm going to give you a concrete real life example. So the Ronald McDonald House, located in one of the Midwestern states, was experiencing a situation where, because it was located near the only hospital for hundreds of miles, and even for the surrounding states, it was experiencing a situation where many families had to travel long distances for their children's medical care, and they were seeking housing at the Ronald McDonald House, and there simply weren't enough rooms for all the families that needed rooms. And so Ronald McDonald House, quite reasonably, right, wrote a funding proposal to get more space, to build additional rooms, additional buildings for people to stay in while their children receive medical care at the only hospital for hundreds of miles in any direction. It makes total sense. If you are working at the Ronald McDonald House, this is completely clear. You definitely know that you have a waiting list of families and you can't take all of them. And in the immediate sense, for the families, it's pretty crystal clear too. But a real question that one might ask is whether the donations needed to build extra wings to the Ronald McDonald House might not actually meet families' needs better were they used to build hospitals, well-staffed, well-equipped hospitals to serve children closer to where the families actually live. I don't know the answer, right? It's probably a little of both. But when you shift from the perspective of the organization to the perspective of the client or the community, you often come up with a different answer to your unmet need. So I really want you to focus not on unmet needs of your agencies and organizations, but on unmet needs of your clients or the consumers of your services, or perhaps it's an entire community. Maybe it's not individual clients, but it's a surrounding community. The bottom line is proposals that focus on needs of those served are far more powerful than proposals that stay trapped in the organizational context. They're also far more creative. They tend to be far more creative and far more compelling because they're speaking to the most proximal, the most local needs for the clients themselves. You have three distinct assignment components for this coming module. The first, due February the 8th, is the message board post 2.1 that takes you through the process of identifying unmet need. The second is a reply to or feedback on message board post 2.1. So you are paired with a partner according to the groupings document. It's a different partner than you had in module 1. And you're asked to give feedback to your partner on their identification of unmet needs. The third and most extensive piece of Module 2 is the organizational capacity assessment. This is not through message board, but rather through assignments, and so in that sense is the first major assignment of the course, worth 20% of your total grade. Please read these instructions carefully. Let me know if you have any questions, and I wish you all the best. And again, please do ask if you have questions about this or any of the assignments in Module 2. Thank you.